Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help mental health professionals grow their dream practices and live a life they love. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building tips. We invite you to take advantage of our private practice paperwork and our signature marketing e-course. And we have a gift for you. This is the exact methodology we use to create our six-figure private pay practices and have helped many other therapists do the same. Go to privatepracticestartup.com and on the homepage, click the button to download a free copy of your dream private practice playbook. Now on to today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of You've Got It, the Private Practice Startup Podcast. Like, holy cow, I was looking at the amount of podcasts that we have recorded. We are almost in the 300s. So today is podcast episode 296. Who would have ever thought, Kate, 6 years ago, that we'd be on this crazy journey with almost 300 podcasts under our podcast belt, if you will. But we're really excited about today's guest. I will share with him in just a moment. But we hope that you guys listened to our podcast last week. You know, whether you love it or not, this is the bane of most therapists' existence. And so we talked about how to stay on top of those notes. Interestingly enough, I bet you this will be one of the most downloaded episodes because it is such a frustrating thing for therapists to do. So Kate and I share our many years of experience on how we stayed on top of notes and give you some quick fun tips that hopefully you can implement and, you know, I don't know, maybe form a new habit around this so it's just not that lingering thing that drives you crazy that you're constantly thinking about. So our guest today is Josh Keller, LMFT, LPC of Keller Counseling. And we're talking about an important topic that we haven't chatted about yet. When clients trigger your own stuff. If you're a therapist and you've been in practice for any amount of time, this has happened to you. So Josh has 3 safety nets to talk about when clients trigger our own stuff. So we'll talk about that shortly. But Josh, he's been in private practice since 2014 in Belton, Texas. He has completed the level 2 Gottman training and EFT externship and is a certified practitioner of the Enneagram Approach. And in his spare time, he enjoys CrossFit, Spartan racing, and sipping coffee in his massage chair. Welcome, Josh.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
It is great to have you. And before we dive in, let's just take a quick moment to thank our sponsors.
You'd think paying yourself and your team would be an easy part of running a business, but that's far from true. With ever-changing tax laws, complex calculations, and different types of employees or independent contractors to account for, running payroll can sometimes be a pain in the neck. Luckily, Gusto has worked for the past decade to make sure that entrepreneurs like you can run payroll in minutes with just a few clicks. They'll even help with compliance, new state tax registration, and international contractor payments. But that's just scratching the surface of what Gusto can do for your business. From comprehensive benefits to hiring and onboarding tools and team management features, Gusto's platform is built to help your private practice scale with confidence. It's all part of Gusto's modern HR platform, one place to help build happy, healthy, and productive teams. As a special thank you to our listeners, we're offering Gusto for free for 3 months at gusto.com/PPS. That's gusto.com/PPS.
Josh, we are so delighted to have you and especially talking about this interesting, fun, important, sometimes messy topic.
Right. Yeah, it really is a challenge. And I think the thing that I noticed here recently is that it catches you off guard, right? You don't know that we need to be preparing for this. It just kind of happens out of nowhere. And then you're like, oh, crap, what am I supposed to do?
Right. And I think sometimes clients, I don't think that they think we're like superhuman, but I think like they think that we're therapists, so we have it all together, you know, and, you know, nothing goes on below the surface except, you know, just being a therapist. And it's definitely not true.
Right. I think we put that pressure on ourselves too, that I've got to go in here and I need to put up this front that I'm kind of this stoic presence in my clients' lives. And, you know, a lot of that has to do with imposter syndrome and, you know, that we've got to, like you said, put up this front. And I think that really can catch us off guard when our clients' stuff hits us kind of in our own heart. So
for sure. Well, and all about the boundaries and, you know, seeing your client in public and all of those types of things. Interestingly enough, I had met someone, you know, I've transitioned into real estate and I met someone and I reached out to her and I was like, I know we're connected on Facebook, but where do we meet in the real estate world? And she looks at me, she goes, Katie, I was your client. I'm like, oh, and then she's like introducing me to everybody, like, this is my therapist. This is my therapist. I was like, hey, that's your thing. So I also think that, our relationship, as important as it is, kind of sets us up also for that very strong boundaries. And sometimes, having to kind of figure out how to manage that stuff. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, this past year has been a bit of a challenge for me and my family. Without going into all the details, we've had some really difficult things that I have actually had walked into a counseling office immediately after a difficult phone call. And that client was dealing with some of the specific things that the phone call was about that I was unaware of. And so that's kind of when I realized, okay, we need to figure something out in order to be able to recover when that sort of thing happens. And, thankfully I was in an okay place to be able to deal with that in real time, but definitely it can catch you off guard. So knowing what to do when that happens, I think is a really valuable thing to have in place for your practice.
Yeah. So we're curious, what got you into the mental health field before we dive more into your topic?
Yeah. So I was actually in ministry for 10 years before I started my private practice. And when I went to grad school, I actually went with the intention of being just a pastor and not a counselor. I ended up working on 2 degrees at the same time. So I got a master's in marriage and family therapy. And really what I found while I was in ministry was that my counseling training probably served me better in preparation for ministry than my ministry training. As a marriage and family therapist, we focus on systems, and there's definitely a lot of systems in place, in any workplace, but especially in ministry. And so when I decided it was time for me to leave ministry, it was just really fitting that I moved straight into counseling practice. I loved working with families and especially couples. And I just saw, what's going on within the home in a marriage having impact, individually and, definitely later on in life, the way that we carry our upbringing into our own identity as people and then into our own marriages, what we witnessed from our parents. So that's really kind of what got me interested in being in mental health. And I've not looked back. I love being a therapist.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing. So share with us a little bit more. So, you kind of set the stage about what happened, and then you're realizing we need to be prepared for this.
Yeah. So I think what I realized was that kind of the health of my private practice was really a reflection of my own internal world. In that particular session that I was referring to, there were a lot of things about this couple that just reminded me of some of my own experiences, and even down to specific individuals in their lives with the same names. It was really kind of eerie, kind of scary actually. And I actually caught myself getting a little bit worked up, more so than I really probably should have for a client. And after the session, I was just kind of taking inventory, what was that about? I felt my heart racing. I was even getting a little angry at my clients, which hadn't really ever happened before. So when I stopped and just really took a look at what was going on, I realized that my own stuff was being triggered by them, that my own emotions that I had, I didn't even have time to sort through them before the session, but that's exactly what would have been triggered. And just really brought to the forefront the need to have kind of a system in place for being able to work through all that, during the session, but also to be prepared for if something like that should happen. It's difficult to put those safety nets in place, on the spot. And so really preparing in advance to have them in place so that if something like that happens again, you're ready and you're not going to be caught in that free fall. So,
Yeah, gotcha. So tell us a little bit about what these things.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, so when you were saying you got off the phone and then you walked straight into your own session working with clients, and that's, then you're processing everything after. Now, did you kind of seek your own supervision or consult, or were these kind of things that you developed over time just in your own practice?
Yeah. So I realized later, especially in preparation for this podcast, what I had in place, but I definitely sought out some supervision. The three safety nets that I, was going to recommend having in place, the first, really is just having a compassionate response to yourself. Like it's really easy to beat yourself up when a session doesn't go the way that you want it to. And, I felt bad for getting angry. But then I realized, I just had to remind myself I'm human too, right? I've got my own things to deal with, and we're not immune to life and, our own stuff, even though we kind of put it on hold and, separate that out when we walk into the therapy room, it's still there. And it doesn't take a whole lot. And so really just having kind of a compassionate response to my own self was really what I had to kind of talk myself through immediately afterwards. But then, the other thing is just having this community of support, whether it's a supervisor or your own therapist or a mentor, or I call them a 4 a.m. friend, somebody that you can call in the middle of the night if you need to. That was the other thing to have in place, just as a safety net.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing this with us, and then also being so open about what happened with the specific emotional reactions that you had to your clients that kind of took you by surprise, that very much took you by surprise because you weren't anticipating having this pop up for you in the middle of session, especially when it was something that was so fresh and you hadn't really processed it your own because you had the phone call, you got the news, you went straight into session, doing your best to be there for your clients, trying to keep it all together, and then your own emotional reactivity became very present in the session. And this is something that I'm sure everybody listening to has experienced on one level or another with a variety of different emotions, because we are human. And in the therapeutic relationship, we connect so deeply with our clients to really understand their reality and to step into their shoes and to join with them and build that rapport. And, we're right there with them in the intensity of what it is that they're working on. And so when it is something that is close to something that's going on in our own lives, it definitely triggers that. And I'm so glad that you are talking about the importance of having support, because there can be specific situations like you dealt with that can be very similar and evoke that emotional reaction for yourself. And then there's just in general, the past couple of years as we've been going through this pandemic, we're all living through this pandemic together, a lot of vicarious community trauma happening, and we're all kind of navigating this world together. So there's kind of like a multifaceted, layered aspect to this, and to have your own community of support with supervision or case consultation and just your 4 a.m. friends that you could call and, debrief and vent to or get feedback and additional perspectives. It's vital for, keeping us to be okay and our passion alive and avoiding burnout in the midst of all of the weight of everything that we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what I realized too was that different people in my community of support kind of functioned differently. I encourage, all the therapists I know to have a therapist themselves. And I go to see somebody to just kind of talk through things. I think that's important because I really feel like, obviously as a therapist, our job is to help our clients become aware of their blind spots, those things that lurk kind of under the surface that they may not realize. And really, I think that that's what gets triggered in those sessions by our clients sometimes that causes those reactions of our own. And so just having my own therapist help me to, after the fact, process that was especially helpful. But then I also have a mentor that I guess it functions kind of as a supervisor. They're not an actual supervisor, but they have clinical experience to talk through, okay, what does that look like, from a practice standpoint? Because we can't get caught up in that. If that happens, on the regular, it's not going to be good for our practice. We can't function well like that. And so, the supervisor helping me, or the therapist helping me deal with my own stuff, kind of under the surface. The mentor helping me, think through, okay, what does this need to look like? Should it happen again, from a clinical standpoint? And then that 4 a.m. friend, that's just about a friend. That's just about support. That's the emotional, like, this is difficult and I want to cry, or I need a shoulder to lean on. And so they all kind of serve different functions, and all of them are necessary. I don't think that we can have an effective practice if we don't have those people that speak into our lives in that way.
Yeah, well said. I just want to take a quick moment for our sponsor.
Practice Solutions is a full-service billing company that specializes in the mental health industry. They've worked with private practice clients ranging from solo practitioners just starting their practice to larger group practices with multiple clinicians. Practice Solutions has even helped a few of their clients to be able to grow from a single clinician to a thriving group practice with multiple locations. This is due to their mission of alleviating the burden of billing to free up your time so you can spend it with clients and on building your practice. Practice Solutions billers all have many years of experience in insurance billing and have helped clinicians to get stubborn claims to process, in some instances recouping thousands of dollars worth of claims. If you're looking for a friendly and reliable billing expert to add to your team, reach out to Practice Solutions by filling out a contact form at practicesol.com. That's practicesol.com/startupnation, or calling 734-437-9432 extension 709.
Is managing your practice stressing you out? Then try Therapy Notes. It makes notes, billing, scheduling, and telehealth a whole lot easier. Check it out and you will quickly see why Therapy Notes is the highest rated EHR on trustpilot.com. With over 1,200 verified customer reviews and an average customer rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars, you'll notice the difference from the first day you sign up for their free trial. They offer live phone support 7 days a week, so when you have questions, you can quickly reach someone who can help, and you're never wasting your time looking for answers. If you're coming from another EHR, they make that transition really easy. Therapy Notes will import your client's demographic data free of charge during your trial, so you can get going right away. Use the promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, that's PPS, to get 2 free months to try out Therapy Notes for free with no strings attached. And remember, telehealth is included with every subscription, absolutely free. Make 2022 the best year yet with Therapy Notes.
Josh, as you were sharing, a lot of, kind of my own experience has kind of come up during, obviously the course of working in the mental health field for 20 years and, being a couples specialist. I would often think like, oh God, it'd be awful to go through a divorce working with couples, or, your partner having an affair, like, oh, and that's what you're dealing with. I do remember though, I had a brother who passed away tragically. Actually his anniversary is coming up in 2009. And I remember seeking consultation, and Kate and I met in supervision. So we would often refer back to our supervisor, who was just amazingly wise and just, fantastic. And she's like, just because I was worried, right? So here I am. I came back to work a week later after my brother had died. Who can prepare for someone dying tragically? Like, you just don't really know. You're just doing your best. And I remember at the time, as I was working with adolescent substance abusers and their families, and I had never. So it was a brother. My client was 17. His brother maybe was 21, 22, and the brother had never come to session. He wanted to come to session this day, and like literally, he's like professing his like love to his brother, and I don't want to lose you. And I'm like, oh my, so I'm like looking up at the sky and tears in my eyes. And like, I just excused myself to go to the bathroom for a second, like exactly what you're saying. Like, brother's never been in session, and now he's like saying he's afraid that his brother's going to die. So that was interesting. Right. And then another one I prepared a little bit better for, because I was like, what I do here is I did have a client die by suicide, and it really messed me up for about a good 3 weeks. And, again, seeking out supervision and just sharing with, my supervisor. And she's like, I just think you need to just share with your clients that you've had a trauma recently, but you're okay, not to worry about you. But if I look a little off today, or if I might stare for a second longer or whatever, please know I'm here with you. But I just need to let you know that, right? Like, I'm not in my best space, but I'm here with you. And that was just really helpful advice. Of course, sometimes we're worried about clients wanting to care for us. And, so it was just this Like, this is what's going on. I'm okay. I'm here with you. If things are different, this is why. And it, went well. And I think being able to sometimes speak things into existence, because like you're saying, like, we are human, we go through stuff,
right?
But identifying it, quickly moving on, because if things are a little weird in session, you don't want to leave them wondering,
Right.
So
right.
That was always very helpful.
Yeah. I think that's a really great way of modeling for our clients, what it looks like to not just ignore your own stuff, but to acknowledge that it's there and continue moving through, that we can do both. We can attend to our emotions and not but some tends to be dismissive of that, but we can attend to our emotions and continue moving beyond them for the sake of our clients. And like you're saying, I think that they want that assurance that, okay, is my therapist going to be okay to finish this session with me? And I think we have to be able to know ourselves well enough to know whether we're not going to be okay to finish the session, and that it's okay to cancel it, or to cancel the afternoon if we need to, and just say, I need a mental health day.
Right.
I'm dealing with some difficult things. So.
The self of the therapist's work is so important, and to have that reflexive, just mindfulness, and just really looking at what is going on in your own life and working through that. And you mentioned earlier that whatever's going on personally is going to be mirrored in business. I know that's something that Katie talks about often, and it's true, whether it's happening with your clients or in another facet of business. And with clients, when there's countertransference happening, like you guys are talking about, whether it's something that's it's a known struggle that you're working on and you have that support and it's an ongoing thing, or whether it's something that just pops up out of nowhere and surprises you, it's so good to be having these supports in place so that you're supported regardless of how it comes, for lack of a better word. Yeah,
and like you were saying, I think just knowing when you're at that point is super important. We can, if we're doing our own work, we're going to know whether we're, living on center or not, whether we're living, in our best place. And the more work we do on ourselves, the easier it's going to be to recognize when that countertransference is happening. But also it's going to be easier to identify a clear path back to center, either in the middle of session or, in our 10 minutes that we may have between sessions, to try and bounce back and be able to continue functioning through things. So having that clear path back is really important. And mindfulness obviously is a great way to do that. There's a strategy that I've been learning lately called focusing. Some people might be familiar with it. It was really popularized kind of in the 70s by Eugene, I'm always say his last name wrong, Gendlin, I think. But it's just a way of just attending to that emotion that's surfacing in the moment and having a compassionate response to it, letting your felt senses tell you there's something here that I need to explore. And it makes sense that I'm feeling this way. I don't have to feel bad about it, but I do need to attend to it, because if I don't, it's just going to keep coming back. And especially if we're seeing people who are dealing with the same things, it's going to keep coming back.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about, one of the things that I've learned for myself is that my emotions are my barometer. So unless I'm touched by, my client saying something or a tender moment, like exactly, I remember I was working with a couple, and this was before I really kind of specialized in affair recovery. And it was, a heterosexual couple, and, the male had an affair, and he was just so cavalier about it. Like, well, I want to spend my birthday with her. And I'm just like in session, like, this guy's a jerk, like just judging, and I'm like, okay, like I knew enough at that time to just like shut my mouth enough and just try to, help guide them. But it's like immediately I called a colleague and I was like, and then there was just this switch, and it was just like, well, my job's not to fix or judge or whatever, but it's just to remain curious. And then I was able to actually go back, the next time, go into session and ask really like curiosity questions. And this is again, back to our supervisor, she would say that there's 3 therapy blunders. You're working on the wrong problem, you're working with the wrong people, or you got attached to an outcome. And at that point, I clearly got attached to the outcome. Like, it's not my job. If if they want to be in a relationship and he's having an affair and she stays in the relationship, that's not my job to fix that. Right. I can bring ideas and thoughts and things to the table for them to look at and explore. And interestingly enough, I had run into them and I see them because they have a business now and they're still together. So something worked, right? But it was that clear identification of anger, judgment. And then it was like, okay, like, where's the blunder here? And then how can I get curious? So, they always talk about the quickest person to change in the room is a therapist. And I think it is our responsibility to do that self-therapist work. It is our responsibility to seek outside consultation, but also then figure out our own barometers of when we're not, being that way. So definitely.
And being too attached to that outcome, I think is what's going to trigger that response that we have.
Yeah.
So, no, that's good.
Good stuff. What a fun conversation.
Yeah. This has been good.
Yeah. So. Josh, what do you want our, I was going to say our clients, we didn't talk about it. What do you want our audience to take away from your message today? Yeah, I think kind of as I said in the beginning, really just the health of your practice is really going to be determined and you're going to set the stage for the health of your practice by doing your own work. It is a reflection of your inner world, and our inner world is sneaky. It's going to find its way in one way or another, whether it's being really disorganized or having frustration towards our clients. And so the more we're able to focus on really dealing with ourselves and understanding what keeps us on center, I think that's going to translate into a much more thriving way of doing business and in turn help more people who come in and sit on our couches. Yeah, be and enjoyable and keep us, alive and invigorated. So absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I know that you have a giveaway for our audience. So what is that? I do. It's actually an Enneagram resource that I developed. It's a way of centering yourself. If you know your Enneagram type, it'll kind of walk you through kind of an ABC method for finding your way back to center using your specific type. And you can download that on my website, www.joshkellercounseling.com/Enneagram. And my name is spelled with an AR. That's the thing that always trips people up when they're trying to find my website. So you can download that for free there and find yourself back to center using your Enneagram type.
What a creative resource.
And perfect for our topic.
Yeah, exactly. So. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being here. It's been such an interesting conversation, and I hope Startup Nation, you all enjoyed it just as much as we did. And speaking of that, if you are enjoying our episodes, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. We would love to have your feedback. And if there's a topic that we haven't talked about in these almost 300 episodes, definitely let us know. We always love to hear from you. And let's take a moment for our Startup Nation superhero shout out for today's episode. And the shout out says, I started listening to your podcast when the pandemic hit and knew my family needed a change. So glad I did. The private practice journey is scary, but I'm confident it will be rewarding. I'm loving the attorney approved private practice paperwork. It was such a relief to know my paperwork is secure and that I didn't have to put it all together by myself. Yes, glad to help you with that paperwork headache. And thank you for the review. This one's from Anonymous, so there's actually no name associated with it. So that's why I didn't give a specific shout out for the name. Awesome. Well, we hope that you guys join us next time. And don't forget to check out those almost 300 podcast episodes. We have a topic on almost everything. And if you actually do go to our website under podcast, you will see that we have podcasts by topic as well. A lot of times people just put the episodes, but when you're searching for something specific, whether it's about money or SEO or how to deal with things when your clients trigger your own stuff, it'll be easier to find that way by searching by topic. So take care, everybody. Have an awesome, inspired day, and we'll see you next time. See you next time, everybody. Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.